Thank you, Robin. Okay, let's get started. Yeah, and if you can't be on camera right away, that's fine. No problem. But of course, I want to see your beautiful face if you can. And let's go ahead and get started. I want to just start with a little bit of a meditation. Let's just ground and center and make sure that we're all present here together in this space and honoring the sanctity of this space. So if it's safe for you to do so, let's go ahead and close our eyes for a moment and just kind of notice your breath. Does your breath flow freely? Is it getting stuck? Let's just be aware of where we are right now, our presence in this space. Breathe into that. Now let's expand our awareness out into the room and into this virtual space, connecting all of us together here in this time and space. Just because we're not in the same room doesn't mean we're connected. Breathing into that expanded awareness, feeling your sisters next to you. Connecting in with your body. Just notice if there's any uncomfortable parts in your body, and just breathe into those spaces. We're not trying to shift anything or make it go away. We're just acknowledging it, sending it some love, and letting it know that we can come back later on and dive deeper with this uncomfortableness and listen to the language that our body is using to get our attention and to communicate with us. Just slowly take 3 breaths as deep as you feel comfortable to go in your body. And then slowly coming back into your body and opening your eyes when it feels comfortable. And just taking a little sip of water, if you have some available, and just kind of grounding back into your physical space. Welcome, dear sisters, to Module 2 of the Thriving Hormones Fall Edition. Today is a really exciting topic. It's actually a few different topics kind of all rolled into one under the heading of getting to know our bodies. You know, in a way that we might not be familiar with or be so connected to. There's a lot of information that we're going to be going over today. And so you have your handout. I was able to get it posted into the group in a PDF format as well as the Word format, so whichever works for you. You know, take the time. If you didn't get it printed out beforehand, I do apologize for the last minute posting. But take notes right now and then go back and read over this information. You have this information at your disposal now for the long term. So it's yours. You can go back to it anytime for reference, and make note of any questions. I'll be taking Q&A kind of as we finish up the different sections, and then getting to the end, we'll do like a big Q&A and see if there's any still big questions sitting out there that people need answers to, okay? So the highlight of today is we're going to be meeting your estrobolome. How many people are familiar with that term estrobolome and know what that is? I'm curious. Anybody? Great. This is all going to be new and exciting then. I know some of you who have been, like Rebecca, who was here in the spring session, and Josiah, who has some reference to that, has a little bit of an idea what that is, but it's always good to, you know, keep refreshing our information as well. We're also going to be talking about the metal element and how hang on, just gonna admit Maria back in, there we go. So we're going to be talking about the metal element and what organs are involved with that and how that supports the estrobolome as well. Once we understand what that is, it's all going to make sense, trust me. And then, how many of you have ever heard of hormone hierarchy? Little bit? No. Okay. So this is going to be really exciting because we're going to put all of this together and you're going to hopefully have a much deeper and more vibrant understanding of your whole hormonal system and body after this conversation today. And like I said, it's a lot of information, especially if you're not familiar with it. So, don't be overwhelmed. Hold on to what stays in your mind for the moment, and then you have this information to go back to at any time. You have the group to post questions. So if you have questions that come up after this, post your comments, questions, whatever, right into the Thriving Hormones group in the Facebook group, and I am happy to answer them and support you, because that's what we're all here for as well too. And this is an opportunity for all of us to get to know ourselves better and on a much deeper level and share in that community, because you might have a question that somebody else has as well too, but just might be a little uncomfortable asking it. So you asking your questions is always supportive to everybody else as well too. So on that note, let's get going because there's a lot to cover today. Okay, just real quick. So most of the information that I'm presenting here today about your estrobolome comes primarily from my teacher and mentor, Dr. Jack Tips, who, if you were on the Passion Play opening workshop, you had an introduction to Dr. Jack Tips, and you also heard a little bit about Doc Wheelwright. And so basically, most of the foundation of all of my work is based on Doc Wheelwright's legacy, that I was blessed to be able to learn through Dr. Jack Tips, with my own education, experience, and wisdom, and everything kind of all rolled up into it and represented in this way. And so Dr. Jack Tips, he's one of the leading researchers of natural medicine that you will find out there. He has personally read over 600 reports and studies on the gut microbiome alone, which is why I always go to him, because I don't have time to be doing all of that. And that's what he loves to do. And so there's a link for his website in your handout. And I highly recommend that you go and sign up for his newsletters. Denise, you're having trouble hearing me? Is anybody else having trouble hearing me?
There was a shift from like it being louder to then kind of went a little bit muffled. I can still hear you, but need to turn the volume up all the way to hear you clearly.
Okay. Yeah, we've had a bunch of storms and we've had like crazy wind and rain going on right now, and I am in a store, so I'm trying not to talk too loud. But if anybody has any hearing issues, like, let me know. I'm going to raise my voice a little bit louder here and see if that helps. Okay. So I was talking about Dr. Jack Tips, and his website is wellnesswiz.com. Sign up for his newsletters. Like, you will not be sorry. Like, he is on the cutting edge of like everything out there that is actually true science, not science in the name of selling something. And there's a big difference there. And so if you're really curious about the science of things, he's definitely somebody to be following. Dr. Mindy Pelz, she's also somebody else that I reference a lot. And I've actually excerpted one of her blogs in here, and she was the one that first introduced me to the whole hormone hierarchy back in 2018, because I'd never heard of that before either. And I thought it was so fascinating. And it really helps us to come to a much clearer understanding of, how we function as women. And so on that note, let's go straight into what is your estrobolome. So the estrobolome serves as a critical link between gut health and hormone balance. Just like so many of you are familiar with the whole gut-brain connection, right? That whole axis, right? Well, we actually have this whole gut and hormone balance axis as well. I mean, we have a gut and everything balance basically in our bodies, and connection. But for today, we're going to be focusing on the gut and hormone connection here, which is really important. And it's this is of such huge importance, because when we have an imbalance in our gut microbiomes, this is a hindrance to being able to balance our hormones or balance any other health challenges that we might be facing as well too. And so we always dial it back to the microbial balance in our guts, first and foremost, when we are looking at anything, to be able to find a symbiotic relationship. And as I like to say, create a healthy ecosystem from which everything else can thrive. So the role of the estrobolome in hormone balance is to basically work specifically with the estrogen levels. That's why it's got the word estro in it. And I'm sure that there is actually systems for progesterone and testosterone as well too, but those have not been studied because nobody needed to know that information for any reason. And so there was no funding, for those studies. But know that those are most definitely, even though they're not talked about, something that is happening in your body as well too. So the key role of the estrobolome is, or it's comprised of these enteric bacterial genes that metabolize estrogen, keeping it stable rather than reducing it. Now, this sentence is really important because you don't often hear people talking about metabolizing estrogen. You hear about them clearing estrogen, getting rid of it, and all these other things, but you don't hear that term metabolize. But it's very important because we do need it in our bodies. And even when it is in a dominant space, which we'll talk about shortly, it's more about keeping it in that safe, stable place that is really, really crucial rather than reducing it, which is kind of the opposite of what we've been trained, through the mainstream and through the medical systems. They're always talking about reducing estrogen, right? And working from that aspect. So it's this stability that's really crucial for reducing the postmenopausal estrogen receptor positive breast cancer and other health challenges as well too. And this is where fully functioning gut microbiome and liver really come into play and are essential for maintaining this balance, especially in the face of, all these xenoestrogens that we're facing from plastics, pesticides, and other environmental toxins these days. If you want to learn a little bit more about the liver's role in the estrobolome, then that's what we were focusing on in the spring edition. And the information is all up in the Facebook group. If you go to class number 2 or week 2, I think I was calling it back then, that will give you all of the information for the liver and how it supports the estrobolome. Because today we're going to be talking about the metal element. Okay, so modern challenges. Even 15 years ago, it wasn't that difficult to support our bodies to be in harmony and balance. I've been in practice for over, 2 decades now, like going on 24 years. And way back when I first started out, working with the gut microbiome was pretty simple. We could make some dietary changes and make maybe a few lifestyle changes, throw in, potentially some herbs and some supplements, and voila, we're back in harmony again. Well, in the last few years, that has really changed dramatically. We have such a huge onslaught of things coming at us today that it is more challenging, but not impossible, to maintain harmony and this symbiotic relationship within our bodies. It just takes a little bit more work. So the estrobolome works through 2 different things. One, specific bacteria. So certain bacteria in the estrobolome process, not just break down estrogen, and produce postbiotics. Now, I don't know how many people are familiar with that term. Has anybody heard that postbiotic term before? Okay, so just like we have prebiotics, which are more talked about now, and of course the regular probiotic, which everybody is familiar with, the postbiotic is actually where the magic is, and that's the sweet spot. And the prebiotics and the probiotics are what lead us to this postbiotic. And a really quick way to be able to picture that and visualize that, the postbiotic, is by thinking of it as the actual ecosystem, right? So you're taking in the prebiotics to feed the probiotics, but you want them to actually stay in your body and colonize and form an ecosystem that's going to support you to thrive. And so that's the postbiotic part. And we'll be talking a little bit more about that too. Okay, and these molecules are very important because that's what regulates the pituitary, hypothalamus, liver, ovaries, and adrenal functions. So that's in the specific bacteria category. And then it's important for estrogen metabolism. So estrogenic cancer and hormone imbalances can result from estrogen lingering too long in the body. Very key part right there, too long in the body. The liver and gut play crucial roles in breaking down these inflammatory 4-OH estrogens. Disruptions come from chlorinated water, antibiotics, EMFs, microplastics, fertilizers, pesticides, and consuming too much commercially produced meat and dairy that have the antibiotic residue in them. Now, quick note here, if you're in Canada, you're not going to have as much antibiotic residual in your meat and dairy at a commercial level as you do in the States. And that's a big thing to just kind of keep in mind as well, too. I mean, it's challenging no matter where we are, but in different countries, we have different issues that we have to deal with in the quality and the health of our food. And so that's just a little difference right there. So these regulatory molecules of estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, cortisol, DHEA, DHEAs, this is what so many of us are lacking today due to the onslaught of these factors that destroy our gut microbiomes over the last 100 years. And like I said, especially in the last little while, and especially since, we have increased the EMF disruptors in our current environment, through this 5G and these cell towers, and all of this increased EMF activity has really made it more difficult for our bodies to maintain that homeostasis at all levels, but most especially at our bacterial level as well. And so that's why I talk so much about, like even in the first module last week, we were talking about turning off your phone at night, turning off your Wi-Fi at night, like giving your body a break so it's not being inundated, with these toxic EMFs that are really disrupting our entire systems. And this is very important that we give our body this break in order to have a chance to repair, rebuild, and restore this homeostasis, for ourselves as well too. And so, estrogen dominance, we hear a lot about this term. And this is a common symptom of an out of balance estrobolome. It's not the estrogen itself, which is what we've been led to believe by, mainstream media and medical systems over all this time, but it's actually the estrobolome. So again, we're looking at the bacterial influence here as the foundation of what allows these estrogen dominant symptoms and this issue to be a challenge in the body. And so some of the symptoms can be abnormal menstruation, PMS, headaches, decreased sex drive, bloating, mood swings, fatigue, anxiety, depression, breast tenderness, fibrocystic breasts, endometriosis, fibroids, hormonal weight gain, hot flashes, postmenopausal bleeding, and estrogen receptor positive breast cancer. That's a pretty big list. So you can see that there is, a lot that is influenced by this. And some of the triggers for this imbalance in our estrobolomes is chronic stress, poor and not enough sleep. And, stress doesn't have to be, we're not even going to label that good or bad. Stress is stress. And so we have to be able to acknowledge, what is happening and within that realm of stress, and to find that equilibrium of balance, within everything. And, the poor and not enough sleep. This is why we started with the whole sleep topic, right? In module 1, like how can we lay that foundation? And this is a huge one that really affects new moms who are also coming into this perimenopausal phase and who have young children and are postpartum. This is an added stressor and just makes it more challenging, but not impossible, to really support themselves at a much higher level as well, too. And then this is where the imbalanced gut microbiome, liver issues, xenoestrogens, this is where even modern gluten and wheat, because of all of the pesticide residue and the toxicity, really come into play and put a stress on the body. And that, modern dietary habits, eating like a kind of a traditional commercial mainstream diet that a lot of people, fast food and focus on out there, those are huge disruptors to the estrobolome. And so the question is then, is balance even possible? in this day and age and with all these things? And the answer is yes. Like I said, it's a little bit more challenging. It takes a little bit more work. Actually, I'm not even going to say it takes a little bit more work. I'm going to say it takes a little bit more awareness to be aware of what is impacting you, and then to be able to make the adjustments to support whatever it is that's impacting you. And as women, we have this capacity to attain balance and harmony, no matter what phase of life we're in. I mean, whether it's the maiden, mother, Maj, or crone. Now, if you haven't been in on any of the other modules, there are 4 phases. A lot of you are familiar with the maiden, mother, and crone. But in our modern age, because we are living a lot longer as women, there's actually 4 phases. And the Maj phase is the newer one that has been included and added in. And it's really cool because now that actually represents the 4 seasons as well. So we have the maiden, which is the spring, mother, which is summer. We have the Maj, which is fall. And that's where I'm at myself, being postmenopausal and between that 50 to 70 age range. And then we move into the crone phase, which is winter, once we get past that point there. And so just a little bit about that. And something I just want to, throw out there as well too, is that, and whatever your choice is, there's no judgment here. But we see a lot of doctors, health influencers, and, women out there saying that hormone balance is not possible without the addition of hormone replacement therapy, even by, they're mostly talking a lot about bioidentical hormone replacement therapy and whatnot. And whatever you choose is entirely up to you. But my main purpose is to provide and show you that you have other choices, and it is not impossible to come to a place of hormone balance without using hormone replacement therapy at any level. So if you choose to go that completely natural route, it is possible, and there's so much that you can do, and that is everything that we are focusing on here in this program for the next, well, we have 5 weeks left now. But like I said, you have access to this, to infinity. And so you can keep coming back to this information whenever you need to. And so, without actually addressing and actively engaging with our astrobolomes, though, achieving complete balance and harmony is not possible. So we have to include it in the conversation, and we have to be able to support our bodies at that level. And when we do, we can leverage its innate wisdom, and that's what facilitates the body to heal itself. And this is where we get to tap into what we already know, and what's already programmed into us as women that we've just become so disconnected from, and the ability to be our own medicine women and healers. Our bodies are freaking miracles. They know what to do all the time, even when they're not in balance. And, things that we might think of as, today we use the word symptoms, right? And illness and disease and all of these things. And what I really like to use is love notes or love messages, because this is communication. Just like emotions are information, everything that is manifesting in a physical way in our bodies is information, it's data, it's communication. And if you're familiar with German New Medicine at all, this is the premise of that whole foundation of medicine that I don't know a whole lot about, but I'm really drawn to. And it all plays into, that when you actually have a physical manifestation of something, that's your body correcting something that was out of balance and out of harmony at an energetic level or a frequency level, first and foremost. And then the physical thing you are experiencing is that, I'm just gonna let Bernadine in, there we go, is that body actually getting to the point where it's correcting it on its own. And so this is where really tapping in and understanding these communications really comes into play. And so issues arise a lot of times, in the imbalance within our astrobolome or any of our, microbiomes in our body when we are stuck in that fight or flight mode, right? When we're stuck in that constant state of stress. And like I said, that doesn't always have to be labeled bad, you know, it can be exciting, it can be good, but we're not meant to stay in that heightened state all the time. We have to be able to come back into rest and digest mode. But issues arise when we are not able to, and then this is when the gut ends up becoming imbalanced and having to deal with a pathogenic overgrowth or imbalance. And that's just the body's natural response because we weren't meant to be in these states for long terms. And so this is where I just want to throw out the note here too that I have in our handout is that, you know, for many, many years, people have been aware of, like I said, probiotics, right? Taking probiotics. But I just want to stress that it's very important that you don't get stuck in the money wasting habit of taking the same probiotic over and over and over and over and over again to eternity. That's not helping anything. Probiotics were meant to come in at a specific time and place and be temporary. And if you're taking the same bacteria all the time, you are not creating a diverse ecosystem. You're creating a monosystem. And that does not support the postbiotic of having them stick around. They're literally just going right through your body. And so, you know, this is a huge waste of money and something that many are not aware of. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention right now. And if you've been taking the same probiotics for an extended period of time, stop. It's not doing you any good right now. You know, this is where variety is really, really important. And this is where, you know, what we're talking about through the whole program here, all the way through, especially in modules 3 and 4, where we get more into the food, is looking at how can we create a lot of this, you know, ecosystem of the pre and the probiotics through our foods, first and foremost, and then looking at where we need to add supplementation to be able to create that ecosystem in the postbiotic world that we want to have hanging around. Okay. Let's see, I just finished talking about that. Okay, so let's look at some of the steps that we can use to achieve balance. I have a few little notes in your handout here. So for those of you that aren't familiar with my 4 pillars, they're vibrant nutrition, mindful movement, sacred lifestyle, and divine connection. And so whenever I give, you know, practical application, I always try to like put it back into one of those 4 categories. And so under the vibrant nutrition category, what we can do to support our estrobolomes, one really basic, simple thing, and especially important now that we have moved into the fall season, and we are not eating as many raw foods as we were in the warm months, and we're eating more seasonally and locally, is to add a variety of microgreens or sprouts to every meal. And that's, you know, a couple of tablespoons is really all that's necessary. And so that small amount of raw food combined with our more cooked foods at this time of year help the body to be able to digest, assimilate, and break down and fill in the nutritional gaps, so that we have a complete macro and micronutrient profile within our meal. And then we're going to dive into this in modules 3 and 4, but I'm just mentioning it here that a really simple tip is to be able to add a couple of tablespoons of a variety of microgreens or sprouts to each and every meal. Very simple, very easy. Sprouts you can actually do, you know, yourself at home. They're pretty simple to do. And microgreens take a little bit more, but they're pretty simple as well too. Another simple thing that you can do is to avoid combining heavy starches with proteins in the same meal. So that would be your, you know, typical meat and potatoes or meat and rice kind of thing. And same in a vegetarian type diet as well too. We don't want to be combining protein recognized foods in the body along with these heavier starches, because in so doing, you're making it more difficult for your body to be able to digest and assimilate your food. And what often happens, especially if you have any disruption already, is this creates a type of putrefaction within our bodies that contributes to dysbiosis and SIBO. So if you have either of those 2 issues going on in your body, those labels going on, that type of imbalance, this is something, one simple thing that you can do that will make a huge difference to help your body restore that equilibrium and homeostasis within your microbiome, your estrobolome gut balance connection system. Making plants and vegetables the foundations of your meal, meaning they're the largest portion. And now that we're in the fall season, like I said, those should be primarily lightly cooked. And this is kind of the opposite of the traditional American diet, where you have like a huge portion. I'm just going with the traditional here. I'm sure most of you, you might be some, no judgment here. We're not going for the big massive steak, a big pile of mashed potatoes, and maybe a representation of like a couple of pieces of like completely boiled to death broccoli. Like that's the extreme. All right. What we're looking at here is some potentially lightly cooked vegetables. So we want some, stir fried or steamed, broccoli. That's a larger portion on the plate, with a small portion of microgreens and sprouts, with a smaller portion of a cooked protein. So we're switching up, the main portions and the condiments, and just kind of like turning things around. And vegetables also include like foraged plants and whatnot as well too. So it's not just kind of your traditional broccoli or whatever. Like, I'm just finishing up the last of my foraged nettle that I caught just before it all got destroyed by the weather here. I was able to harvest and clean and prep and blanch like a huge batch of it. And I've had it in like the coldest part, almost frozen in my fridge. And so I've been able to just extract out little portions of it. And I actually had that as my break the fast meal before I came here today. I cooked that up with some chopped mushrooms and a little bit of water buffalo tallow, nutritional yeast, salt and pepper, some fresh dried thyme from my previous garden, and a little bit of water buffalo feta as well too, and a couple of my chicken eggs. And so that was like the cooked portion of my meal, but it included the cooked plant-based part in it. And because it's not quite below 0 yet, and I can still get red leaf lettuce, and we still have some radishes and a little bit of cucumber and a little bit of carrot, I had my little salads, on the side that combined all my raw vegetables as well, along with my flax oil for this part of the moon cycle. And so I hope I'm getting your curiosity aroused for next week's module, where we're going to dive into exactly what I was just referring to right there and go really deep on that. But that's just an example of what I'm leading into right now, and how we can really support not just our strobolome, but all of our biomes in our body. Because like I said, our whole bodies are basically all these different biome systems, and we are primarily bacteria. Okay, what else have we got here? Oh, the other one that I wanted to mention in the Vibrant Nutrition was to avoid modern day gluten or wheat. And that is because it is so genetically modified that it's really hard for our bodies to recognize it. I am not dissing wheat or gluten in and of itself. I'm saying the modern day versions of it. And also because in most North American countries, in order to harvest those products, they use glyphosate as part of the harvesting process. And that is such a deadly toxic chemical. We do not want to be taking that into our bodies. It's already in the air and we can't escape it on so many levels. So intentionally ingesting it is not in our best interests. And this is a huge disruptor of hormone balance, and creates a lot of inflammation in our bodies. So we want to stick to the ancient grains. There's so many of them, and they're so good. They have this incredible taste to them. And they're just full of nutrients and nutrition as well too. And they're much easier for our body to be able to simulate, digest, and break down. So you notice I'm not saying eliminate all of these things from your diet. I'm saying look for the ancient ones that have the true value, and let's combine them properly. And we'll also be diving more deeply into how we want to activate these foods so we get the nutrition by soaking and sprouting. And that's modules 3 and 4 as well too. Okay, so in mindful movement, move your body. Now, I'm not talking hardcore gym workout or exercise even. Just move. Think about how you move throughout the day. And then think about counter movements, like either through stretching or dancing even, like just moving. One of my favorite habits is that at the end of the day, I just like to, before I go to bed, And you can do this to music or not. Just kind of tap into your body and look at or think about, how was I moving my body today through the day? And most of us are moving through linear movements, right? Up, down, straight, pressures in the same places, or we're just sitting. So what can we do to counteract that? Like, just listen to your body. Sometimes it's just a matter of like, bending to the side and kind of moving and twisting. And I mean, however your body wants to unwind, just let it do it. Get your head out of the way. Nobody's watching you. Do it in private, but give your body the space to be able to do that. That is huge, and it will thank you, trust me, 1,000-fold down the line, even just 5-10 minutes. And if that feels really weird for you and you're familiar with yoga and Pilates, throw a little bit of yoga or Pilates, stretching or movements in there as well too. Other things that we can do are just walking, right? Walk briskly, slowly, preferably on earth or ground, not on pavement, as much as you can. And I recommend like 30 days, a minimum of 3 times a week, just as a foundation, for our bodies. And this is really important for our metal element, which we're going to be talking about in a few minutes, diving deeper into, because the metal element is part of it is the lungs and how we take in air and oxygen. And believe it or not, it's actually really important to be taking in this cooler, more crisp air as well too, to be able to support our bodies and to adjust to the seasons, right? Yay, Bernadine, you guys got out today, or you got that stretch in, awesome. And it's like just being mindful, right? It doesn't mean that you're going to be able to fit these, you're going to be like so on it, you're doing all of this like every day, all the time. And that's not what I encourage. As we talk about your love missions for this week, you'll see that I'm encouraging you to just pick one thing to focus on primarily. And just get that as part of your daily rituals, as I like to call them. If it's at all possible and you're not already doing this, you're going to want to eventually be incorporating some weight-bearing exercises. Now, weights have been touted a lot in this category, but what I want to throw out there is my favorite way is to be able to just actually use your own body as your own gym, for lack of a better description right now, right? Because that's really, if you go back in time, that's how we were made. We were made to be like moving in our environment. Like if we look at little kids, they're like rolling around on the ground, they're hanging from trees, they're like climbing on things, they're constantly moving. We want to emulate that, even as adults. And one of my favorite humans that I love, who really represents this for me and whose work has made the biggest difference in my life, is Tony Riddle. And I've included the link to his website in your handout. And I just want to share a quick little story here. For those of you that aren't aware, I recently, let's say it was the beginning of September, where I sustained a very traumatic injury to my left foot. I had a 200-pound steel piece of farm equipment fall 2 feet from the air and land on my foot. And it was severely traumatized. And so, but and now, let's see, where are we? Almost 3 months later, it's been amazing. I am in awe of the way that I have been able to heal this all on my own, no medical intervention, using nutrition, frequency. For those of you that have the Healy and the Mag Healy, that was a huge part of being able to work with that, as well as Reiki, doing that myself. And then also, if you were on the Passion Play workshop, our opening workshop, you'll see how I was able to bring that method in. And that is where I have really seen some significant shifts since I started doing that as well too. But the reason I'm even talking about this is because if I had not been doing and practicing a lot of what Tony Riddle teaches, primarily what I'm referring here to is his whole series of foot exercises he calls toga. Because as modern humans, especially as women, because we've crammed our feet into high heels, and I'm up until up until 10 years ago, I never wore flats. I only wore heels for everything. My flip-flops were like freaking 4-inch platform heels, okay? And I had so many past injuries and whatnot. So my body was hurting, to say the least. And what I learned through him was that the first thing that we need to do when we are reestablishing, you know, the natural movement of our bodies is to look at our feet, because our feet hold the whole balance of our body. Like everything is on our feet. And most of us, our feet are literally just these hard knobs all fused together. And they don't balance and hold our bodies properly. And that's where knee pain, back pain, headaches, and spinal issues, and I had bunion issues, and all of this stuff comes from. And that was the case with me. Like my toes could barely move. Like I couldn't even bend my toe. My feet were just stiff, solid, like all fused together boards. And so I've been working his exercises, his togas, like for the last couple of years. And honestly, if I had not been doing that, I feel like 100% confident in saying that my foot would have been crushed and my bones completely broken, because it would have just snapped completely. But because my feet are pliable, my feet are not fused together, they have that flexibility, they have that movement. When that couple 100-pound piece of equipment landed on my foot had give. It was able to actually sync with that movement and not be completely cut and crushed. And so that's my personal theory, and I'm sticking with it because I really feel intuitively that that played a huge role in preserving my ability to be able to heal and not be severely injured, you know, by this accident that happened, especially as a postmenopausal woman. You know, anybody that I've spoken to, even in the medical system, they're just like, your foot wasn't crushed. Like, how have you healed it to this point already in that short period of time? And so just using that as an example of how incorporating a lot of these things can really serve you at your highest level as well too. Okay, moving on to sacred lifestyle. Water filters, these are huge. It's really, really important to have water filters, not just on your drinking water, but on your showers as well. You know, if you are tapped into city water, not only do you have the fluoride issue in most places, but you have chlorine. Chlorine, when you take a hot shower, becomes a noxious gas, and you are inhaling that. And that is a direct disruption to your thyroid balance. And so, simple fix, filters. Robin has turned me on to an amazing company recently, and I have her links. I'm going to try and put the link up here in the group afterwards. But Robin, if you see that I haven't been able to get to it, can you actually post your link for the system that you have shown to me and introduced to me in the group later? It's at a great price. It's an amazing system. It's available in the US and in Canada. So it's something that I highly recommend everybody take a look at. If you already have a drinking water filtration system, great. Let's look at your shower and bath systems as well too, because we need to incorporate this as a whole unit. Like I said, and especially if children are in your family, young children, this is something that's very crucial. Exposing them to that hot water and those gases is very dangerous. And most people don't know that. So this is something, you know, that I just want to bring to your attention and then give you a solution for as well too. Okay, follow the natural light cycles, meaning sunlight for sleeping and rising. And that's what we talked about last week. Another one that we'll dive more into when we get into the sacred lifestyle, the actual module, is choosing non-toxic personal and household items, especially cleaning products. My favorite is Norwex. I love them. They are definitely a little bit of an investment upfront, but they last. I'm still using the same cloths 15 years later, you know, so you make that initial investment, but then it stays with you, you know. And I love them because it's simple. They have the silver woven right into the cloth. They are not shedding like a lot of regular microfiber cloths do. So you don't have that shedding issue going on. And, you know, for me, we feed our animals raw meat. I use raw meat in our household. To be able to just wipe my counter with this cloth and know that that's it, that's all I need to do, and then rinse it in hot water is huge. It's a huge lifesaver and time saver, and especially right now in the conditions that we're living in, not having a regular home and whatnot, and you know, working with the environment that we have, having these Norwex cloths and using them has been a game changer and a lifesaver for us. So if anybody's interested in learning more about that, connect with me. I became a distributor because I want them to be available to anybody and everybody because they've changed my life. So
let me know and connect with me if you're interested. Divine connection. Practice daily gratitude and body scans. Spend time barefoot on the earth or touching a tree, preferably an elder tree, absorbing that natural energy. Regularly connect with your womb through meditation and stillness. And I'm not going to go into the detail right now, but I have included 3 potential little practices here for you in this divine connection category. So at your own time, go ahead and take a look at those and see if one of those resonates with you, or you would like to, kind of give it a try. Highly recommend it. And of all of these things today, like I said, you're not going to go through this list and start to try and implement everything. Just pick what jumps out at you that said that you're like, you know what, I could do that really easily, and incorporate that into your routine, because that's what we're looking at, is making these part of your daily rituals. And once something becomes part of your daily ritual and you don't have to think about it all the time, then that's where the magic is. And then that's where you can go in and add something else in. Okay, and I'm noticing that I am doing a time check on myself here. So let's go straight into the metal element and how that supports our estrobolomes here. Okay, so the lung and intestines play a crucial role in supporting the estrobolome by aiding the process and elimination of inflammatory estrogens and toxins from the body. In traditional Chinese medicine, or TCM, the lungs are considered the yin organ, and they symbolize the metal element, which embodies structure, clarity, and letting go. And the lungs and the large intestine, they work together to facilitate this connection to the external world in order to be able to release what no longer serves us physically, mentally, and emotionally. And so the metal energy is linked to this autumn cycle, and it encourages us to release and transform anything, to transform in alignment with these natural rhythms. So the primary emotion that is associated with the metal element is grief. And traditional Chinese medicine teaches us that persistent emotional states can generate toxins within the body. And every thought and emotion has a direct, immediate effect on our physical state. And it's this prolonged state, being in this prolonged state, that really impacts our bodies. Now, I just want to make a quick note here. Using this word prolonged, that doesn't mean that there's a timeline to our emotions. But what we're looking at here, and what I want to emphasize, is that for many of us, myself included, and as women, we've been so kind of conditioned to not feel into the depth and intensity of our emotions, right? And we try to think our way out of things, or rationalize our way out of things, or put a cap on it, push them back down, judge ourselves, and kind of avoid that depth at all cost. And that's where issues arise. And so when we're talking about prolonged, I want to encourage you to allow yourself to be able to really feel whatever it is that you're feeling, without shame, without judgment, without guilt. And then that is what allows yourself to be able to move through it at your own pace. When things become prolonged in a negative way, it's because we're trying to stuff it back down, or we're not acknowledging it, or we're just looking at the surface and we're not going deeper. Like, what is the emotion beneath the emotion? There's layers. Don't be afraid. We won't die from our emotions as much as I thought I would for almost 40 years of my life. But the magic is where we actually really get to feel and really get to tap into ourselves. And that's where the healing takes place as well too. And so this is just an invitation to really tap in, go deep, feel, and then allow ourselves to be able to move through that in a natural way. And that's the key. So quick recap here. The yin organ within the metal element is the lungs. The yang organ is the large intestine. It affects our sense of smell. The tissues are skin and body hair. Grief emotions are grief and sadness. Taste is pungent. The color is white. Season is autumn. Climate is dryness. Yeah. And now one thing I really noticed that stood out for me as I was going through this material myself was the connection between the lungs and the skin. It's one that we often forget. We don't think about how our respiratory system is connected directly into our skin, right? But that plays a huge role, and our skin is our first line of defense for everything that we are experiencing in our environment on all levels. You know, and so the lungs and the large intestine are what are governing the chi and the respiration. And I talk a little bit, you know, in your hormones here about how we can support that. But it's important to note that a weak lung chi actually disrupts the flow of hormones and affects that directly. And it can lead to irregular estrogen levels. And that impacts the estrobolome's ability to be able to regulate the inflammation that can be a byproduct of these estrogens that are not metabolized properly. And then something that's really awesome here too that I've concluded in your notes that we might not all be aware of is what's known as the defensive chi or the Wei Qi. And the lungs and our large intestines manage this as well too. And a key element in here is that this helps to regulate our body temperature. And so you're starting to see how that can come into play with our hormones as well too, especially in this midlife phase. Let's see. And like I talked about, it really plays a role in the moisture or dryness of our skin as well too. So oftentimes we hear, you know, oh, if you're experiencing dry skin or an imbalance in your skin, thyroid, right? But first and foremost, lung first before we jump to the thyroid, you know, and that's something that we don't hear talked about often. So I wanted to highlight that. And keeping in mind that our skin is one of our major detox pathways. And so if our body is experiencing issues in other levels of detoxification, like through the large intestine, then it's going to come out on our skin. And so skin issues are, you know, a direct indication that we want to look at the large intestine and these other detoxification methods within our body. And then once again, I have included, you know, the holistic support to be able to support this metal element. So we have some vibrant nutrition, we have some foods that are really helpful, like pears and daikon radish, watercress. Apples are in season now for a lot of us in the North America. Almonds, garlic, onions, turnip, cabbage. So a lot of these foods are actually in season at this time of year. And I did separate out mindful breathing, but it would come in under the sacred lifestyle category. So just noticing our breath, especially in the cooler climate. Do we have a tendency to shorten our breath and to be more constricted? Let's notice that, and let's take the time to come back to that relaxed full breath as well too. The mindful movement, as we've been talking about, Tai Chi and Qigong are excellent things to be able to bring in. Prioritizing emotional processing and just feeling that we've been talking about, that comes into our sacred lifestyle. Divine connection, we've talked about that a lot. We've had some examples here. One thing I just wanted to highlight in this category is silence. One thing that I really noticed with myself, and I didn't want to acknowledge this for the longest time, and I think some of you might be able to relate, was that I would be like, oh, I'm not talking, I'm in silence. Meanwhile, my head is going a mile a minute, and this voice in my head is just continuously going, right? So when we talk about silence, we're not just talking about our voices and vocal silence. We're talking about mind silence as well too. Because if we don't create that space and that silence, how can we tap into our higher selves and our divine intuition in order to be able to be guided by that in our lives, right? So I just wanted to highlight that for you all. Now, if you have a Healy device or the Mag Healy device, there's so much that you can do to support yourself as well in this metal element, you know, to be able to support your lungs and large intestines and everything on a physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual level. In your one-on-one session, we can actually dive deeper into this and we can create a little protocol together to support you deeper on that level if you have these devices. And that's where it's important too, if you have not filled out the questionnaire at the top of, that's pinned to the top of the group, please do that so that I have the information I need to be able to really tailor your one-on-one sessions to exactly what you need. And so I'm suggesting that you book one, you know, now as we're in the beginning of the program, because you have two, and then book the other one towards the end of the program or once we've finished, so we can look at how you can put all of this, what you've learned together in a way to be able to move forward for yourself. And then, this is where it's really, I hope you're beginning to notice how everything is just all connected, right? So the metal element, the seasons, our bodies, everything is in an ebb and a flow, and it's all intricately connected. And we're not separate from nature, we are nature. So it's really important that we embody these cyclical rhythms in our lives so that we can be a part of what supports us to thrive at every level. And now before I move into the next part, I just want to see, are there any questions on what we have talked about up to this point? Feel free to unmute yourself and just ask your question. Denise.
So just curious, so say in the fall, every fall, you get a skin rash, say on your face and body. From what I'm hearing you say today, this could be definitely connected to this season, to the water the way it is.
Yes.
And so the intestine would be impacting that work on both lungs and intestine.
Yes.
To clear that.
Yes, absolutely, because the two are connected and work together, right? And they both are working together to be able to clear the toxins. And so, if something is coming up on our skin, that's a sign that some detox pathway in our body is not necessarily functioning at its highest level, or it's just overloaded. And so, and these toxins can be environmental. It can be like the EMFs. It can be, a direct chemical. It can be mental and emotional as well too. So it's not just limited to environmental or food or those things. So it takes a little bit of, and this is where I'm really encouraging these divine connection practices to tap into ourselves and ask our bodies, because this is information. Like if you're getting a rash, so for example, on your face, that's information. That is your body trying to communicate with you. And so acknowledging, like you just did, where the potentials could be coming from, but taking the time to tap in and actually ask your body, I see you, I hear you, I feel you. What is the message that you are giving me right now through this information? I'm listening. I may not understand you right now, but I'm listening. And I'm working towards opening this line of communication so I can understand you better. And just that in itself, acknowledging, like when our bodies get acknowledged, it's amazing the transformation that can happen. Like we don't always need to know exactly or have all the answers, but just acknowledging that can make a huge shift and give your body permission to finish its job of removing that toxic load however it needs to come back to homeostasis and balance. Does that make sense?
Yes, very much so. Just interesting that it happens for her every fall, right?
Right. And so, that's an indication of, okay, seasonally, these organs are more impacted at this time of year. So how can I support these organs? Is there also a mental story going on? Like I know I'm going to use my 91-year-old mother as an example here. The minute we get into the cold, wet, rainy weather, she has this story about how it affects her body and how she's going to feel even before she starts to feel that way. And so then she manifests that and moves into that. And so we just had this discussion yesterday. I'm like, Mom, what are the stories that you're telling yourself as soon as we hit this season that are potentially contributing to what you're experiencing? And so just opening the door for that thought process, and not judging ourselves and not shaming ourselves. This is come from a place of curiosity and love. That's what this is really all about, is getting curious. Like, wow, this is happening. Why? Where is this coming from? What could be an underlying cause? What story am I holding in my subconscious that I'm not even aware of at a conscious level? Maybe it's mine, maybe it's not, maybe it's ancestral, maybe it's lineage. Like there's so many possibilities. Let's get curious. And this is where I said the Healy really comes into play as well too, because this is where I like to use the Aura scans and the coaching app, if you have those, to be able to dive deeper into what those potential frequencies and the imbalance in those frequencies are. And that's what's so cool about them, is they actually show us, is it ancestral? Is it our own? Right? And so it really helps us to be able to get curious and get more answers at a deeper level. But like I said, we don't always need to have all those answers. Just by getting curious and acknowledging it often creates a major shift in and of itself.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Anybody else? Okay, let's move on here, because I want to just make sure that we have time for questions after this next section here. So I'm going to move into hormone hierarchy, and basically, you know, everybody banters that word around, hormones, hormones, hormones. But do we really understand what our hormones are? Do we know what they are? It might not be what you think. So we're going to have a little conversation about this right now. And I hope the background is not too much for everybody here. Let me know if it becomes a problem. I can put a headset in. Okay, so when we think of hormones, everybody goes straight to estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, right? But there's so much more to it than just that. Hormones themselves are vital chemicals that coordinate various functions in your body by sending messages through your blood to your organs, skin, muscles, and other tissues. These signals tell your body what to do, when to do it, playing a crucial role in your overall health and well-being. So that's pretty cool. So understanding what they are actually doing there. Now, to date, scientists have only identified like over 50 hormones, but I'm feeling very confident in saying that there's a whole lot more in our bodies that we don't even know about yet. And we're just scratching the surface of, you know, how miraculous and how amazing we really are, especially in this hormone basis level. And so hormones are really important because they help to regulate many of the key body functions like metabolism, homeostasis, growth and development, sexual function, reproduction, your sleep-wake cycles, our moods, and so much more. And even though they're present in like little tiny amounts, if they are out of balance, they can have a really profound effect. And so, you know, even just a tiny little bit can have a huge impact. And that's why it's something that's really important to pay attention to. And this is where I keep coming back to those love notes or love messages. You know, let's listen when our body is quietly whispering to us. Let's not wait until it has to like scream at us to get our attention. You know, it just makes life a lot more enjoyable and a lot easier that way. So just throwing that out there. All right, what are our hormones actually doing? So they're like little chemical messengers, and they oversee and manage hundreds of processes in our body. So often a single bodily process involves a chain reaction of several hormones all working together. And most of the time, a specific bacteria is required in order to support this function. And that's why we've been talking about the estrobolome, right? And looking at how the bacteria play a role in all of this as well and supports our personal ecosystems. So a hormone will only act on a part of the body that it fits. So think of like a lock and a key. And so the hormones are the keys to the cell, and the cells of their targeted, you know, tissues or organs or fat tissue, that's the lock. And so they have to be able to fit into each other. So if the hormone fits the lock or the receptor site on the cell wall, it works and it delivers the message just like it's supposed to. But if it doesn't fit or can't get in because something's blocking it, that's where we start to have imbalances happen. And so your body uses hormones for two different types of communication. One is between two endocrine glands. So one gland releases a hormone that stimulates another gland to change the levels of hormone it releases. An example, your pituitary gland releases the thyroid stimulating hormone, or TSH, and that promotes your thyroid gland to release its hormones, which affect different aspects of your body. So that's one example. The second thing that it does is it communicates between your endocrine gland and a targeted organ. So not just from gland to gland, but also from gland to organ. And an example of this is when your pancreas releases insulin, which acts on your muscles and liver to help process glucose. So hormones play a crucial role in maintaining the balance and harmony within your body on pretty much all levels. Let's take a quick look at which body tissues make hormones. So specialized glands in your endocrine system produce and release most of the hormones in your body. A gland is an organ that creates one or more substances like hormones, digestive juices, sweat, or tears. Endocrine glands release hormones directly into your bloodstream, allowing them to travel to various parts of your body to perform their vital functions. Okay, so that's pretty much the basic definition of that. Now, we've all heard the term endocrine system, but let's take a look at how many actually know all the elements that are included in the endocrine system and are familiar with that. I'm just curious. Kind of, sort of, right? So we're all familiar with like maybe little bits and pieces of it, but what we're really looking at here is coming to an understanding of how all of them play a role. And so within the endocrine system, we have the hypothalamus, we have the pituitary gland, we have the pineal gland, thyroid, parathyroid glands, adrenal glands, pancreas, which is one that most often we don't realize is included in there, and the ovaries. And on top of that, not all the organs and tissues that release hormones or hormone-like substances are part of the endocrine system. So outside of the endocrine system, other things that we want to be aware of is the adipose tissue, which is our fat tissue, right? So fat tissue plays a huge role for women here and in our health. Kidneys, liver, the gut or gastrointestinal tract, and placenta. That's a really cool one. So we can see how there's just so much involved in all of this and how intricate we are, right? In the way that we're made and the way that we function. That's why I always say, like, we're just freaking miracles that we don't even really have a clue or understand. And we're just beginning to get to know ourselves as human beings that, you know, in this day and age. And so I'm going to run down through each of, you know, these glands in the endocrine system, and I'm going to highlight one specific hormone from each one. So we talked about the hypothalamus. Dopamine is connected to the hypothalamus, and so is oxytocin. Now, oxytocin is actually produced by the hypothalamus, but stored and released by the pituitary gland. That's important to know. So something to, you know, maybe make a note of and try and keep that in the forefront of what you remember. Okay, pituitary gland. Pituitary gland is responsible for so much, but a lot of you are familiar with GH, or the growth hormone. So we're going to highlight that one from the pituitary. And the pituitary is kind of split up into two. There's the anterior, which makes and releases 6 hormones, and then there's the posterior, which releases 2 other ones. And the anterior is what releases the growth hormone. The posterior, again, is the one that does the oxytocin that we just talked about. You have your pineal gland, which is a tiny little gland located at the back of the corpus callosum, which is the nerve fibers connecting the 2 halves of your brain. And this plays a crucial role in regulating your sleep-wake cycles by releasing the hormone melatonin. Then we have the thyroid. Thyroid, you know, is that small little butterfly-shaped gland, and that sits at the front of our neck. And, you know, we've all heard about all of the, you know, the T4, the T3, and the reverse T3 that comes from the thyroid. We have the parathyroid glands. Now, the main function, most people, in case you don't know, we all have like 4 little pea-sized parathyroid glands, and they're located behind the thyroid glands. They sit in behind there, and their main function is to release PTH, which is the parathyroid hormone. That is what maintains your calcium blood levels and supports bone health and plays into that. Okay, then we have our adrenal glands, which you're all pretty familiar with. And those are the little small triangle-shaped glands that sit on top of our kidneys. Cortisol is the one that's most often associated with our adrenals. Then we have our pancreas, which is an essential organ, and like I said, is actually part of our endocrine system. and it sits in the back of your abdomen, and it plays a really important dual role in your digestive as well as your endocrine system. Now that is responsible for insulin as well as glucagon. And then we have our ovaries. So we're born with 2 ovaries, each located on either side of the uterus, below the opening of the fallopian tubes. And they're responsible for what we know as the sex hormones, the estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. Now here, the placenta, this is where the placenta comes in. The placenta is a temporary organ that forms in your uterus during pregnancy, providing oxygen and nutrients to the developing fetus. It produces the hormones estrogen and progesterone to maintain the pregnancy. And so,
Joanna, you cut out a bit on that last sentence. If you could just lean closer for a second, so I think Zoom will just capture you better.
okay, thank you. So the placenta is a temporary organ that forms in your uterus during pregnancy, providing oxygen and nutrients to the developing fetus. But it also produces the hormones estrogen and progesterone to maintain the pregnancy throughout that time period. So it's actually producing estrogen and progesterone during the pregnancy as well too, which is something that not everybody is aware of, which I thought was really cool. Okay, so some of the conditions that can be related to hormone imbalance issues are diabetes, thyroid, irregular menstruation, PCOS, female infertility, obesity. And again, these things are not, medical mainstream has turned these into labels and created, medicines and prescriptions for these things. So I'm just using these terms to highlight imbalances in a way that you might be familiar with, but inviting you to look at them again as information and communication rather than something gone horribly wrong in your body. And so the things that can lead to these disruptions or these imbalances in hormones is disrupted digestion, stress, poor nutrition, sleep deprivation, lack of sunlight exposure. That's a huge one. And that's why I keep talking about this and throwing it in here so much. Toxin exposure, if we have tumors or abnormal growth in the body, endocrine gland damage through injury is also disrupts hormone balance, autoimmune challenges, which again is our body screaming at us to get our attention, to relay information and communication. Hereditary gene mutations. Now, this is one that I kind of threw in here just because I wanted to open the conversation a little bit to epigenetics. Mainstream medicine and a lot out there would have you believe that just because you have a gene, then you are destined to be manifesting that gene and have that issue, so to speak. That's not the case. These genes, whether they're present, whether we have whether we have inherited them or not, it's important to understand that we can turn them on or off ourselves by the choices we make in life, by the foods we eat, the environments we're in, by our mental and emotional states, the way we choose to live our lives, the relationships we have in our lives, like all of these things play a huge role and come into this category of epigenetics. And I found a really cool article that I've linked in your notes here, a Harvard article talking about childhood development and epigenetics and how it relates to childhood development, which I thought was pretty fascinating. So I just shared it in there in case somebody else is like really curious and wanted to take a look. And the reason I was highlighting specific hormones when we were talking about all the different glands in the endocrine system is because now I want to introduce you to the hierarchy. So this is the really cool part. If you get nothing else out of this whole thing today, if you could just like remember this part, that's the magic, and it's so sweet, and I think it's really fascinating, so I hope you do as well too. And like I said, this was Dr. Mindy Pelz back in 2018 was the first time I heard her teaching and talking about this, and my jaw just hit the ground. I was like, oh my God, why do we not learn this even in nutrition school, right? And you never hear the medical system talking about this, but there's actually a hierarchy to our hormones, and it's not all just connected to the sex hormones. there is actually 4 levels in this hierarchy. And in your handout, I've included her whole blog post. I just kind of copied and pasted it and put in my own little notes in there as well too. So you could read it, and then the link so you can read it in more detail. She has a really cool graph and a picture in there as well. So I encourage you to go read that and look at that. But at the top of our hormone hierarchy, before we can even look at the sex hormones of estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, we need to look at the 3 that are above those. And the very top one is oxytocin. First and foremost, that is the primary hormone. When we are talking hormone balance, that's where we need to start. So, and I hope you understand why I was highlighting certain things in the whole conversation today, because I'm putting it all together in this hierarchy here right now for you, right? So we have oxytocin as the number 1 hierarchy in our hormone balance. Number 2 is cortisol. And I'm willing to bet, yep, that's Mr. Leonard joining us, the cat behind me. So he'll just hang out for a bit. The second one, sorry. So oxytocin is the first one. Cortisol is the second one. So remember, this is where the adrenal glands come into play from our endocrine system. And we were talking about cortisol. Third one, insulin. Right? So we're talking pancreas, insulin. So third one is insulin. So these are the 3. I'm just going to, excuse me one second. I'm going to close the door behind me. Dropping my blanket here that I'm wrapped in. Okay. So let's go back here again before we go to the 4th one. Oxytocin, top of the hierarchy, most important. Second, cortisol. So when we're looking at balancing, we want to do it in this order. So you want to look at oxytocin and balancing that first. Then we want to look at cortisol and balancing that next. Then we want to look at insulin and balancing that next. And those all 3 all need to be in harmony and balance before we even look at estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. That's huge. Because pretty much out there, anybody else talking about hormone balance, even natural health practitioners, they just go straight to estrogen, testosterone, and progesterone. But if we don't have harmony, coherence, and balance in those 3 that come before that, doesn't matter what you do to balance those other ones, they will never come into full harmony and balance. And again, this is so interesting because these are the same order of importance of hormones in birth. Exactly. Thank you, Robin. Right? And so this is so huge. And these are conversations that are not happening. And yet it plays such a crucial role in our hormone balance and being able to understand how our bodies function. You know, and that's why I called this section Know Your Body. Because if we don't understand how all of these elements and pieces come together, then how can we support ourselves? Right? Like I said, you can be doing all the right things, taking all the right supplements, spending all this money, you know, on supplements, and have all these restrictive diets and, you know, really like pigeonhole yourself into this protocol or program, you know, which I'm not knocking any of that. It all has its place. I do these things with the people that I work with one-on-one as well too. But if we don't have the foundation and the understanding, then these things are not as effective and supportive as they could possibly be. And why so many, I hear so many women saying, oh, I've taken all the supplements, I've tried all the protocols, I've worked with so many practitioners, and I still have this issue. And this is often what happens, is because they're only looking at a small piece of the picture instead of the entire picture and all the elements and bringing them together. And so that is my primary and main focus. And I hope what I am leaving you with, you know, in this program, the most, it's making me think huge thoughts about how wrong we move through life, because yes, most women move through, I can't read the rest of it. I don't have it on my screen. Actually, Robin, I'm going to invite you in. Can you comment on that for a second?
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe easier for me to even get my thought out, because I don't like typing words. I like saying things. So thank you for the invitation. This is just blowing my mind. I don't know if you guys can hear my little one. Atlas, please keep your voice down. I can't hear myself think he's so loud, but Zoom does a really good job of blocking out.
I can't hear him.
Okay, good. Well, he's coming right here, so you might not. You have to be quiet if you're gonna sit here.
Hi, Atlas.
Hi. So what I meant by like this blue is blowing my mind because there are certain hormones that are really important that you're aware of when you're moving through the birth portal in order to have like the birth of your dreams or a more natural birth where you don't have to tap out and use drugs or surgery, though I'm not talking about people in emergent situations. I'm just talking about regular moving through birth. And if we're able to access this different way of giving birth, like that have given birth very differently than most women around me. They go to the hospital and people tell them what to do and they give up their power and feel like they're, that they need this medicalized support for birth. Atlas, please stop. Mommy's trying to talk. No more. No more. Hold on one second. So if more women were able to understand what I had to move through and understand in order to give birth the way that I have, which is, I don't realize that it's radically different until everyone around me is like, oh my God, you give birth at home and with no pain medications and in the water and all of these things. But in order to give birth that way and really not get stalled and not be able to, you have to allow these hormones to do what they're meant to do in your body, which means you can't be afraid. You can't have your power taken away from you, or else cortisol comes in and knocks down oxytocin. They can't be there at the same time. So we have to get into a state that allows the oxytocin to really rise to the top and be the star of the game. But when you've been told you have to go to a hospitalized setting where there's machines beeping and there's a nurse that is like going through a divorce and your doctor doesn't give a crap about you, and all of this shuts you down, it puts you into a space where you're flowing the cortisol, which then makes your birth harder, which then makes more interventions come into play. So I was thinking of like, nothing ever changes from that state, but we're told that it does, but we're born in that state. We should be existing in that state where we're always trying to keep the oxytocin flowing and the cortisol levels down. But if we were all just taught this as women, everything would be different. And that's why I'm saying I'm having this mind-blowing explosion right now of like, oh my gosh, we're all like moving through the world disconnected from birth when everything is from that space of birth. And we should be flowing still through that same mind process. Like, what in your life is taking your power away? What in your life is making you scared? What are you running from? How can you surrender to what you need to surrender, but stand up in your power and stand in your sovereignty like you would to have that birth, but live that through all chapters of your life. I don't know if this is making sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. And that is so amazing, Robin. Like, I have tingles just listening to that, because that is exactly it. Like, you put it together and you brought it together in a way that, a lot of other mothers here can understand and put it all together as well too. And so I really thank you and appreciate you for, vocalizing it in that way as well. And that's the whole point. Rebecca, I see your hand. I'll be right there in a minute. I just wanted to say that is the whole point of this program. Is I want to get this information out there. I want all of you to understand it so you can share this out and take this to other women, because this is where the power is. This is where we get to take back our own health. This is where we get to step into our full selves and come home to our natural birthright as earth keepers, wisdom keepers, and the medicine women that we are. And this is how we stand in our power and not turn it over to somebody else dictating every aspect of our bodies. And this is where we learn how to trust in the healing process
and allow ourselves to heal on every level, because it is totally possible. Rebecca, I am going to, you have a question. So unmute, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on what Robin was saying. And, you know, it's so funny when I hear oxytocin, that was where I was, Robin, 40 years ago with my babies, all four of them, you know, and I knew the role then that oxytocin played in my body. But to tell you, honest to God, since postmenopause, I didn't even think I had oxytocin anymore. Other than I know, you know, when I connect with the infants and my grandchildren, and it's the happy thing. And I have lots
your
of happiness in my life.
You have
Pardon?
dogs or dogs.
I have dogs.
Your pets,
Oh, and when I get
dogs
with
too.
my grandkids, like I have a 3-week-old or a 3-month-old
3 months.
grandchild, you know?
Yep.
So I do feel it again, but I don't recognize it as what it is. And I'm really battling the cortisol, the high cortisol levels, right?
Yep.
So yeah, that really speaks to me.
So that's perfect. So Robin, I was just going to say, that's where your focus would be in working in the oxytocin, you know, like what are the ways that you can work with that and not even look at the rest of the other hormones at this point. Start there. Go ahead, Robin.
Well, I was just gonna say off of what Rebecca just shared, it's like you're moving through a different birth portal. You're moving through the birth portal to be on the other side of menopause. And
Yeah.
maybe it takes the same ingredients that it did to birth the baby, of getting into that space where you feel safe, where you feel supported, where you're shutting out whatever else is not important that's trying to influence you to make you feel in that state of fight or flight. And maybe we can draw back on younger us's who moved through the birth portal to remember, like, what dropped me into me, what helped me to surrender to the process of birth rather than fighting the menopause. How can we surrender to the process just like in birth and get back into that space where the cortisol is coming down and the oxytocin is going up? Because, you know, I believe that these are rites of passages, that it's just a different it's just a different birthing portal. We're birthing something different. We're birthing the next versions of us instead of our babies.
Exactly, Robin. And that is exactly the invitation in perimenopause. And that's exactly what comes up. Perimenopause to menopause is an invitation to birth yourself as your true self outside of the motherhood phase. Like, who is the woman that is not just the mother, but who is the woman that is in the next phase of this life before we move into that crone and wise woman phase. And so we are literally birthing a brand new self in this phase. And that's why it can be one of the most challenging transitions of all the phases, because it's the first one where we are really just focusing on us and still maintaining the dynamic of family relationships and other relationships, but making ourselves that priority and really connecting in on a deep level. Bernadine, go ahead.
Yeah, you're talking about me. Perimenopause, right here, loud and clear. And I just wanted to say, that's a lot of the work that I'm doing is like kind of like I feel like I'm sloughing off the dregs of any of those like self-deprecating, self-loathing, like any apology for being me, all of those, you know, old habits of being self-sacrificing and putting other people first, not speaking up for myself because I don't want to be a bitch or I don't want people to get mad at me. Like I gotta let all of that go and focus on me right now, because if I don't, I feel all of this, the stress fucks up my digestion and I'm not sleeping well, and then the cravings start, and I try to soothe myself with alcohol or sugary foods, and that just makes it worse. And
Yeah.
so I'm really hunkering down on meditation and movement. And this morning I took my coffee. I'm still drinking my coffee, and I
That's fine.
it out. Had it with oat milk though to balance it out. Barefoot on the earth, and
There you go.
um really getting into like sacred ritual for myself so that I can make meaning out of what is moving through me, because it just
Yeah.
was so much, especially with the climate of the earth. I feel like the world is going through perimenopause right now. Honestly, it just feels like every
It's a lot.
we're all giving birth to ourselves in a
Yeah.
new way, and like not resisting is the key.
Exactly. And I love the term you use, sacred ritual. You
Yeah.
know, that's something that and you've heard me mention it today, like, you know, take something and turn it into part of your daily ritual. You
Yeah.
know, when we look at everything in our lives as ritual and ceremony,
Mhm.
that's where we really get to tap back into ourselves and not feel the drudgery,
Mhm.
right, of things, as opposed to I have to do this, or you know, whatever. It's like looking at it from a place of how can we turn these things into part of our daily rituals, turn them into sacredness and ceremony.
Well, giving to myself and knowing what I need and prioritizing that. Because if
Exactly.
I don't, if I'm just like, oh, I need to get this one last thing done, or oh, this person's really depending on me, I can't let them down, that's when I just start to get,
Start
thin
to unravel.
and start falling apart. Yep.
Yep. Exactly. And that's the thing, you know, this is where it's so important too, because often at this age of midlife, we have been in cycles and habits of putting everybody and everything else first. And so often we are in a depleted state mentally, emotionally, and physically, and we're dealing with our own challenges. And this is where the challenges in our bodies on a physical plane can get much louder and start yelling at us, because it's like, hello, we've been doing this for a really long time and it's getting a little old. Can
Exactly.
we start changing this?
Yeah. Can't get
Right?
away with it anymore.
Exactly. You know, our body is asking us to just really step up and make it a priority so that we can thrive. Because if we're not thriving, then what we're giving out into the world is is not complete. What we're giving to ourselves is not complete. Like we have to give to ourselves first and foremost from this highest place of highest frequency. And then we can take that and give that back out into the world without depleting ourselves and still coming from a really full cup. And that's the thing, you know, it goes back to the old adage, like put the oxygen mask on yourself first, and then you can help everybody else. And this is the time of life where we're really getting that message very loud and clear. Denise, I saw that you unmuted yourself before I lost your picture. Did you have something to add?
Sorry, I just have to plug in. I was just curious of your impact or your input, sorry. Like how beautiful, Robin, to be able to have had those kind of births for your children, and not in my case, right? And for, I don't know how of the others here.
Yeah.
And so what can, for those that weren't birthed in that way, I'm sure it impacted them right all along from before
Yep.
birth to during and after now. And so what do you ladies suggest for that, for helping those that aren't, they're not here to this time in our lives yet, but to help them before they get here so they're not handling what we're handling?
Well, I was going to say, this is again where we come back to ritual. You know, each phase of our life, you know, for example, we can go back and create a new ritual and rewrite the story if we were not happy with the story, or not should I say not happy, but it wasn't what we would resonate with at the highest level right now, and we can recognize the way that that's affecting the frequency of our lineage as well as the future generations. And so this is an opportunity to rewrite that story through ritual, through story, right? This is where it really comes down to. Somebody whose work that I follow, and she really dives into this realm that I absolutely adore,
is Jane Harwick Collins. She is an incredible wise woman. She's in her Maj phase as well too. She's Australian. And her work just all really taps into all of this. And I actually have I have some information that I will share out into the group that came from her, and it's exactly about this. It was a little free handout that she had, and it was about rewriting these rituals and stories of our birth stories, of all the different, transitions that we've gone through in life, how we can actually rewrite that story and change the energy of it as we move forward. And in doing so, we are actually changing the energy of the past and putting that energy out into the collective as well as in our own lineage for all the future generations as well. And so being able to really affect mass resonance on a much larger scale in that way. So I'm going to make a note. I have a pen here somewhere. I'm going to make a note here real quick.
Like whole courses on rebirthing, and I can't remember the format. I think they're all in like guided meditations and with drumming. She's worked with indigenous people to build this like course. I almost did do it. I did
Who
not.
is this, Robin?
The woman that you're talking about, Jane.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, she
Yeah.
has a whole course on it, or like a series of guided meditations that you can purchase. And I just want to say, I was not born this way. I was not born into
Yeah,
what.
Me neither.
I was born through C-section and then blamed for all of my mom's like issues in life afterwards because she didn't have the birth she wanted. So I came from like the opposite of what I wanted for me. But my first birth did not go the way that I thought, because I read all the books and I like intellectually had all the information. It really took until this third birth for me to really like have the birth where I could fully surrender, the birth of my dreams. It took the lived experience and each time shifting.
Yeah.
Between each birth, going within myself, going deeper to peel back, like, what am I afraid of? What's holding me back? And I think this is where I was kind of, getting to it, this big picture of like all of life is birth. The more work we pour into ourselves, the more we go within, instead of without. The stronger you are through moving through each phase birth portal. And so there is a whole process called rebirthing. And you can look that up. I'm sure you can find a bunch of different practitioners that do this. And I've been through an experience with the rebirthing where I was rebirthed through every lifetime. And that was so tremendous. You should have heard me crying. Like, it was like the biggest crying, sobbings for like 30 minutes that came out of me as like I was shot through. It was so fast. I couldn't really even see all the mothers I'd been birthed through. I just felt the ache, the pain, the disconnect and everything, but then brought at the end of that experience to have rewrite it within my DNA. And it sounds trippy what I'm saying. It's really trippy. It's definitely something that, you want to be facilitated through with somebody who knows what they're doing to hold you in that. But it's possible to go back in and even just, as simple as I've done another where I've gone back to when I was born, and instead of being received into, my mom's arms that were not loving and didn't receive me the way that I would have loved to be, I went back into the operating room, and instead of the doctor pulling me out, I grabbed me and I loved me, and I poured into that moment in a way that it shifts you at this cellular level.
Yep.
It doesn't make logical sense. If you sit in your logical mind about any type of rebirthing, it doesn't make sense, but we are beings who exist in such a logical state when you start to really understand us. So
Exactly.
I just wanted to share that like, I have had to do a lot of work to get to the space that I sit in now to have this view of birth. And you know, maybe you guys will find your way, those of you who haven't yet, to birth yourself into this chapter through that lens and have the opportunity to rebirth yourself into your instead of your postpartum, your
Postmenopausal.
postmenopausal state. Yeah.
Thank you, Robin. That was just so beautiful. If you have a recommendation for the practitioners that you worked with, if you could share those in the group, that would be great. If you don't have those connections anymore, that's fine. But if you still do, that would be really cool. If anybody else has practitioners or people that they've worked with along these lines that they recommend, please do share them in the group, because that's what we're all here for, is to share our experiences and to share, you know, other amazing practitioners and modalities that we've worked with that have supported us on this journey as well too. You know, it's not just any one thing. I always say that it's not the one thing that's going to be the magic bullet or be that magic pill. It's finding the combination of things that is the right combination for you in this moment in time. And so the more we can share these different facilitators and these amazing practitioners that are out there and these experiences, then that's how we all get to support each other. Denise, did you have something to add?
I was just going to say thank you so much. And it's also like, just as we rewrite some of our own past, like you're saying, of just of seeing it differently, and I mean, for those of us that have the divine as that piece too, of being there and being able to change the story from what it was into something healthy and beautiful.
Yeah. And that changes the frequency, right? So we go bring it back to frequency. You know, what are the frequencies that we're carrying of the stories that we're carrying? And how does that affect our frequency? How does that affect the collective frequency? And how does that tap us back into our Earth Mother's frequency as well too? Did anybody else have anything to add or any other questions? Okay, so just wrapping it up real quick, you have some love missions or assignments for module 2, which was to reread the material and become more familiar with it, print it so you can write on it and have it handy. Pick one of the practices from the Divine Connection under the Astrobolome section and work with that. Those of you that were on the opening ceremony Passion Play workshop, if you have not watched that yet, please go back and watch that. It's really going to, I'm going to keep referring back to it throughout the entire rest of our time together. And it really is the number one piece, or like number one, like first layer piece is what I'm trying to say here as the foundation to be able to build. Like everything that we're doing is layers. So the Passion Play, the 7-minute method that I shared in that, that's the first layer, the ground that we start building on. And then last week's module 1, where we build on that, we add more foundations to it. And then this week, we're adding more foundations, right? Through gaining understanding and knowledge and putting all of that together. And then next week, we'll be jumping into some of the actual details of vibrant nutrition. So how can we really support ourselves? So module 3 and 4 will be talking about vibrant nutrition. The first module will be just the basics of the methods that I teach of what to eat, when to eat, and how to eat it. So that's the basic foundation of our vibrant nutrition. And then in module 4, we'll be going a little bit deeper and looking at it. Okay, now how can we actually take this and apply this to us as women with a cyclical nature? And so those are the 2 really cool parts that are coming up next. And then also to keep noticing your daily habits. And if you haven't chosen an app yet or a method to be able to, you know, just kind of track where you are at, you know, in your cycles, if you have a menstrual cycle, and if not, a lot of us have been using the moon, which is what I kind of work with to track and cycle that. And then Robin and I are taking a dive into a whole nother realm and seeing outside of the moon what other possibilities are there to be able to, you know, track and monitor our cycles as well too. So we're getting curious in that level with and working with that as well too. So we'll hopefully have more to add to the whole repertoire for everybody as we go. And so that's pretty much it. I want to, oh, Denise.
Oh, sorry. So under the third one there, you said if you have a Healy added into your coaching app, so add in the verse every day in every way, I'm getting better and better.
Yes, so this is what we talked about in the Passion
Oh.
Play workshop.
Sorry, I'll
Which is
watch
fine.
it.
Real quick, I put it in here because part of the Passion Play method, there's several different layers to it. And one is where we're creating our master verses, which will make sense when you go back and watch that. But until you have your master verses created and work on the different spheres of your life, I wanted to encourage everybody to just take this very generalized master verse that covers every aspect of ourselves and our lives and put that into your coaching app, as well as writing it out, keeping it beside your bed, and then repeating it 7 times at night before you go to sleep, and then sensualizing that, which is a term we learned in that workshop, which is basically sensing and feeling into that statement. Like, what does that look like for you? Who would you be if you were getting better? If you were better in every way, on a physical, mental, emotional, like what would you look like? How would you feel? How would you talk? How would you smell? Like, bring the senses into it and really sense and feel into it. And then put it into your coaching app and vibrate whatever comes up in your message from that as well too. So that's how I've been bringing the Healy into that whole practice as well.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm sorry that you had to repeat it.
Oh, no, that's fine. You're welcome. I'm sure there's others that haven't seen that part or haven't watched the opening workshop yet as well too. So that's a little review for everybody and hopefully gets your curiosity up to get you to go back and watch that, because it really is important and plays a huge role in everything that we are sharing here and using to support ourselves too. So if that is it, I think we have, we have definitely gone over. I thank everybody for your time and for being just present here today and holding this space together and creating this safe space for all of us to just really be able to say what's in our hearts and say what we're feeling and to be able to support each other at this deep level. And can I just say, I am so honored to be here with you all. And it's just like, fills my cup up so much to just have all of you, be here together and in my frequency and sharing your frequencies with me as well too, as well as your knowledge and everything else that you have to add. And I am just so grateful to all of you. So thank you. And I look forward to seeing you all next week.
Thank you so
Bye.
much. Blessings,
You're
everyone.
welcome.